Peace, human families of the planet Earth. You are now live on Super Heru Radio. I am your host, Radio-Aseer, along with my co-host and leader in the episode 10,000 Years, Radio-Aseer, Moorally, Black Hawk, all of the Super Heru family, the human families of the planet Earth. Bless all of the ancestors who were maliciously looked over yesterday as they tried to celebrate. Well, I should say, when they did that whole Columbus Day ritual thing. Oh, that's today, right? Yeah. These are all the ancestors that were erroneously mislabeled and put out there that, you know what I'm saying, that they was something that they weren't. They were some sort of alien or whatever, when we know what that's all about. We want to honor our ancestors in the names that we know them as, you know what I'm saying, not as the names that people want us to call them as, you know. So we definitely want to do that. All the ancestors who conscribed the tribe of Ben Ishmael, as well as all of the original ancestors who lost themselves, who were slaughtered at Wounded Knee, as well as all of those ancestors that were put into, again, fictitious jurisdiction based upon their lack of foresight, as well as being usurped by the people that they actually tried to help. You know what I mean? So, you know, you're not supposed to bite the hand that feeds you, but, again, this is America. You know what I mean? So long as you could, you know, afford to buy a bigger dog, you know what I mean? All of that, those old adages go out the window, you know? I also want to say love and light to Selena, my wife, the Empress 10,000 years, on our 14th wedding anniversary. We in dispute. You say it's 13, I say it's 14, so it's somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? However, but it's been definitely a wonderful journey, and I wouldn't want to do it with nobody else. I definitely want to give thanks to her for being in my life and helping me get past a lot of the situations that happened earlier on that we've talked about before, and it's always been a voice of truth in my life. Just like all original women or women who love their man is supposed to, and vice versa. You know what I mean? So based on that, tonight being that it is our anniversary, we're only going to go in for like an hour. But a lot of things going down in the community. I was being bombarded with different people hollering at me about some of the wild stuff, again, that always goes on in the so-called community. And, you know, again, man, I just want to say, well, I don't want to say I told you so, but, you know what I mean? I just want to do the knowledge to saying that there is something to standing on your own too and keeping your integrity and turning down situations that maybe could be lucrative financially, but will put you and your soul in a binded situation. So all those people who are strong enough to say no, you know, this show goes out to y'all. You know what I mean? We definitely want to always support the truth, but we also want to support maybe, I don't want to say reconciliation, but we want to support dialogue where people can be heard, you know what I'm saying, in regards to whether or not you necessarily agree. That's not the point. As you can see, the adversary is always in conflict with him and his other minions, yet still they always seem to come together when it comes time to lock everybody else out, you know what I'm saying? So we need to do the knowledge to that and pay attention to the subtleties that manifest from situations such as this. For those people that don't know what I'm talking about, there is quite a few YouTube diatribes going back and forth between various camps who, you know what I mean, are down with each other, but are not. I don't know. All I see, again, is just a lot of back and forth stuff. But in that, I think that it's also good because it lets the original people know and the people who are in the quote-unquote community know that there is issues that, regardless of how smart and intellectual and whatever you are, there are still certain issues that we are suffering from as a people that have not allowed us to move beyond petty differences that sometimes lead into extraneous situations. So in that, you know what I mean, what this does is that it deteriorates aspects of those people maybe just coming into consciousness, which I believe is the purpose of the whole thing, in my opinion, which is to throw off the work of other people who may be sincerely, genuinely trying to do certain works, and as well as turn people off to the backbiting and bickering that goes on usually in quote-unquote black community. Now, this don't mean that nobody else don't bicker. This don't mean that nobody else is backbiting and gossiping and enslaving their own people and doing all of that. Every race on the planet is doing that to their people. Don't get it twisted. Don't think that for some reason black people are always at the bottom. It's not true. It's not true. And if we're going to really be who we say we are, we're going to be on the square, then we need to do the knowledge that there's other things that's manifesting out of this, such as the fact that this, if you look at this situation and all the other situations that happened from the past, you know what I mean, you would see that there's a consistent role of individuals rising from the community and creating then the discourse that turns into deteriorated dialogue, you know what I'm saying? And again, this does not, we have to look at what's called the super objective, which is who benefits. Who benefits from the insecurity and the double talking and the slandering that goes on in our community, especially when we're supposed to be the ones that's enlightening everybody else in the world with this third culture. Remember, there was a point in our movement, or in this quote-unquote movement that people refer to as the conscious community, in which people are coming, or we're coming into a certain, let's say, strata of almost elite knowledge that most of the other so-called black people, you know what I mean, 85% didn't really come into or really understand like that, or would turn themselves off to when they hear it coming from somebody like us. But these same black people would then go to the movies to see The Secret and then start to follow that new age aspect of the knowledge instead of getting it from somebody like us. Yet, they have been poisoning aspects of this type of knowledge that we have been, and its effect that it could have on the woke populace for years. A lot of people, I don't know if y'all remember the In Living Color skits with the character that Damon Wayans used to play, which was a brother in jail who would be building on some real deep shit, but because he was basically, or they wanted to make him look literate, you know what I'm saying, it was always, lampooned or funny. Again, things like that were put or placed in the psyche beforehand, so that way when you start to hear brothers or whatever kick with certain inflection that don't necessarily sound articulate the way, let's say, Europeanism sounds articulate to modern-day people, you would be turned off from it. You know what I'm saying? And it worked to a large degree. They had characters like that. You know what I mean? Anytime you have a situation where you have people who are coming out of a colonized or colonial situation, like Columbus in that sense, you know what I mean? This is 2012, and these people, knowing what they know about this history, knowing what they know about everything else, they're not changing that history up. And it's funny that they describe on this day particularly, these people who happen to be of Italian descent would describe themselves as Italian, an Italian-American holiday. You know what I'm saying? However, all of this is made to throw everybody off of the main vehicle, which is the fact that these people that we are calling the Indians, that again are not the first people to walk on this landmass. And they know that, you understand? And that when you look at it from the perspective that these people were basically descended also from Caucasian people who specifically were runaway slaves themselves, it gives you a better dichotomy and a better overview as to why they're placed in the position they are, why certain Caucasian people started to enslave them and try to rape and kill them and all of that, almost as in resentment for not sticking it out with the rest of the so-called white populace. So if anybody goes on YouTube, I posted something for free. A brother, Noble Moore, we had a class in which we were going over this direct aspect of the whole thing. And in that, when you see it's on YouTube, it's called Clearing the Cobwebs. Clearing the Cobwebs. If you type that up for my city, it'll come up. The Cloud True Moral Science, something like that. But in that, when you check it, you'll see what I'm saying. And you also see that we go through different aspects of what people perceive as white. You know what I mean? Because, again, we're dealing with the European, let's say, the European mindset when it comes to caste. So, in that, the old Moorish Empire, in a sense, was responsible for the decay in terms of the caste system, Yet, our caste system was not based on race because we were dominant. So, therefore, it wasn't like we was creating rules to specifically exclude certain people. The only people that could not be included with certain discussions were people who were, again, Slavs or indentured. And even some of the indentures were able to rise out of their situation, and come into situations where they wind up ruling an empire. So, again, when we look at religion in the context of these times, we can't look at it from the perspective of what we perceive as religion, going to mosque, going to temple, going to church or whatever. Because even though that's what's going on, that was mainly the masses, the people who were running the thing, running the institutions. These are the people who understood religion at the time as they were taking advantage of the Piscean energy of the age. They began to take that energy to basically use religion the same way that they use political parties today. You know what I mean? People who are quote-unquote Muslims can kill just as many as people who are quote-unquote Christian. The Buddhists ain't exempt either. They done killed a lot of people in the world too. So did the Hindus, so did the Dravidians, so did anybody that basically took an aspect of the old, what they call that old-time religion, and put their spin on it, which then allowed the demiurgical energies to take control of them, and the bloodletting and all that thing starts. However, we cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater. And we here at Super Heru Radio have always been about clearing up a lot of the misconceptions about different terms and stuff that people be throwing around synonymously like they all the same thing. So on one of the clips that I saw in the quote-unquote beef that's going on right now, one of the brothers said that sovereignty paperwork is not real. And that's true. But as we said here on Super Heru Radio many times, to be more clear though, to be more exact, is that we simply mapped out the point from which the actual conscious movement started veering from the actual true tenets that was left by people like Noble Moorally and CM Bay and these types of people, and started dealing with the UCC. All of that was injected through the Patriot movement once the Patriots realized that they had no access really to the American continent as free people. They were people that had to be freed. And so we lie under the false conception today that there was more of them enslaving us at a time when there was more of us than it was them. So, okay, you can believe that if you want. What we have to understand is that the quote-unquote African slave trade, as we understand it, went two ways. But before I go into that, let me get into the sovereignty thing. So in that sovereignty paperwork, that's true, because really the term sovereignty with an E is really dealing with gold. So because that was the name that we gave, or that was Holy Roman Emperors was using to describe gold as sovereign. That's what made them sovereign, the fact that they had this gold. You know what I'm saying? Yet they didn't have as much. I don't think they had as much as the Moors over here. You know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not trying to say that to pit one against the other. I'm just saying that this leads to why certain people or certain aspects of our empire began to be turned against each other, because some people may have felt that they wanted more than what the other person had, or vice versa. Either way, in that, then that's true. So in that, when we talk about UCC stuff, we're really talking about stuff that really is about fiscal responsibility, right? Whereas sovereignty, again, that's something, again, dealing with a natural resource. You know what I'm saying? Whereas nationality is dealing with you in your truest original persona. See what I'm saying? And then what's the other one? Okay, sovereignty, nationality, fiscal responsibility, which is basically UCC filing and stuff like that. So we have always said filing UCC is not what makes you sovereign. You know what I mean? And we have always put out there that filing UCC, though, is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that the way that it has been worded and the way everything has been jumbled together, everybody is looking at everything from a universal conception. So because the so-called conscious movement, as it was burgeoning from, let's say, 83, or let's say 82, let's say from the time of the first brother Dawood Tate to, let's say, 81, 82, to like 92, you know what I'm saying? This is a whole underground thing where there are original people who are starting to come into this real universal occultic knowledge that not only predates what they have been taught, but actually is empowering them in a whole spiritual way. And you got to remember, most of the war that we're fighting it essentially from the top down, from a fifth-dimensional space down to a third-dimensional space. So most of the shit that manifests when we see it, or by the time it shows up on YouTube, you have to understand there's already been a hyperdimensional aspect of that has already taken place. That is only now manifesting in the third-dimensional representation of that information coming from this fifth-dimensional space in the form of the combatants or the people that's going at it. So, specifically speaking, then, when we start to discern what is what, everything has its own place in study. It's just that you got to know exactly what is what. If you ask a guy a certain question about a certain filing process or whatever, and he can't give you an A plus B plus C plus D plus E, then you know that he does not necessarily have the whole thing. So regardless of what it is he's pushing out to you, either he knows and he's trying to drag it out of you, or he or she is trying to obfuscate or take away from the fact that they really don't know. Either way, it's not beneficial to you. So everything is really about what you are understood as. So because, like I said, most of this movement was invaded by these patriot people, Winston Stroud, Jordan Maxwell, Peter Moon, Preston Nichols, all of these dudes that these people have been bigging up in the community because, you know, they may have talked about Moors or may have admitted certain secret here or whatever. We started a lot of Moors in the temple, outside the temple. When I say Moors, I'm talking about black people in general. That's in this consciousness thing. So Tunisian Moors, RBG Moors, whoever Moor, black people would never start getting into all of this and started getting real in. And certain people started having certain wins. But again, remember where this information is coming from. Coming from the same white boys who realize that they're not really involved. So essentially, it gets to a point where we have to regulate how and why it functions the way that it does. So every so often, some new piece of the puzzle comes in, and everybody jumps on that. And acts like that is the answer. To those people who have been striving to shed light now for the fact that this was infiltrated by these people, and certain things was given up to certain people wasn't. And I know this for a fact, because, again, back when Myra Sherrill was alive, blessed the dead, this dude Winston used to call her all the time, trying to get info, trying to get that, and she would play, you know, because she was a master Gemini with her Mercury, she really wouldn't give up nothing, but she would want to get more information from him, so it became this dance between them sometimes. And I would tell her, you got to stop that, because this dude is still coming from a different jurisdiction. He can't even the quote-unquote reservation Indians, casino Indians, they could at least claim Indian or Native American jurisdiction. Dudes like Winston Strout and them, they can't really claim nothing. All they can claim really is descent from the Sons of Liberty, which is going all the way back before that to the ancient order of Sons of St. Tammany, which was, again, the first round of Morisco or Franciscan, meaning light-skinned Moors, Bays, who were allowed to become part of St. Tammany's thing in the Lenape. And in the process of that, William Penn, who was under the jurisdiction of, again, those Bays or whatever, started to come up in there as well through the Freemason or free and accepted right thing. So basically, what we're saying is that sovereignty back then, again, was dealing with gold, specifically as a natural resource. But our people use gold for different reasons. A lot of the gilding and original gold techniques and goldsmithing techniques that you find in places like Lydia and in ancient kingdoms like Elam, you know what I mean, are also Samatia, you know, are also found over here. But the techniques that we used to do it over here was a lot different. So I'm not trying to necessarily create a us and them mentality, but I am trying to say that there was a certain mentality that was here that was always based on freedom, that was not enjoyed by our cousins and them that was coming from across the water, who was really starting to, being that they were the side of the family that was really into creating this amalgamated empire, they were the ones who were really dabbling with a lot of the darker occult stuff that eventually got interpreted through the Freemasonry in the Western context. Because initially in the Moors, like the Knights of the Alhambra and them, they all were priests. And in that, a lot of those Moors were priest kings, the ones that was dressing up in what people today call them KKK uniforms. Back then when we was dressing in them, that represented something totally different. But again, to throw us off of our own individual culture and relative culture, it is now used as a means to throw us off, the same way they put the fez, Leopold and them put the fez on them captured Africans that they used to slaughter the other Africans. Leopold, being a direct descendant of Leopoldus is the first, the Moor of the Holy Roman Empire. So like I said, all this political infighting, all this stuff that you're seeing right now, a lot of the reason why we are not getting together as a people is because we are still entraining ourselves on these old vendettas that remanifest them every incarnation in whatever political context we find ourselves, because we never resolved how we wound up in the beef in the first place. And that was so they get the actual system running to the point that they can't stop it. And so it eventually takes off without them. So that way anybody who's in a certain know of how to flip it can then take advantage of it. And that's what happened. The federal government itself then, or the federal government itself, is essentially mandated to protect the original inhabitants. That mandate still exists. But there's certain documentation that exists in the world in which it basically came from three specific powers of the so-called Old World, who entered into agreement to eventually denationalize all of us by the middle of the 1900s. And as it started with the destruction or the takeover or the bombing of the Kingdom of Morocco with the British Empire, all of this now became a major issue in terms of how we could deal with each other from that point on. Because essentially, at one point, I would say after July 1st, 1880, after July 3rd, 1881, all Moors all over the planet, wherever they was, fell under the jurisdiction of the government or the country of wherever they were. Prior to that, they were always under the jurisdiction and protection of, let's say, the original empire that ran or was running everything from that point. This is why C.M. Bay, when he talks about stuff, he always says that there are only two major empires in the world: the old Moorish Empire and the Franciscan Moorish Empire. The old Moorish Empire with the empires, kingdoms, and dominions, and then the Franciscan Empire with countries, nations, and states. And now we move into a corporate oligarchical empire in which we have corporations, with basically corporations, trusts, and banks. In this world, though, people who are dealing with sovereignty, meaning countries and nations that are dealing and only want to pay their debts in gold and silver, are those countries then that are in league with each other, which then cuts out any country that can't pay with sovereignty or does not have its own sovereignty. You see now how sovereignty, the word, now takes a different context when you put it in the proper context, putting it in the aspect of gold specifically. So, in what they entitle the redistribution of wealth, what they're trying to do is basically create a system in which the corporation will act as the medium between the people. In that way, corporations become governments. So now, sovereignty, or those who are trying to do that then, are seen as enemies of the state due to the fact that it is against public policy for 14th Amendment citizens to deal with gold and silver to pay their debts. You understand? Due to the fact that gold and silver puts them in a different world order, of which the United States, as a federal government acting as its own government, cannot exist in, because it does not have its own gold. It is only the steward of the gold of the world until the original people come back into their proper place. So due to the injustice that they brought on us after let's say around from 1863 on, it became a situation where they were basically trying to give us payback for the thousands upon thousands of years that we basically created them and enslaved them and did everything else. Being the youngest race on the planet. As the youngest race on the planet, then they had no real understanding of how the cycles of time go. Therefore, they fell under the karmic retribution for enacting revenge on us based upon this whole, again, Yakubian experiment and bringing them here. So in that, a world that was basically allotted for them to rule and create, which was then predicted all of those years early in the Yucatan Peninsula by those Moors who originally helped start the process to begin with, they put themselves back in a situation now where, based on that fact, the only way that they could actually claim some type of supremacy is based upon the recessive aspect of their genetics. So the weakest aspect of them had to be picked up as the strongest. Therefore, genetically, due to the recessive aspects of the depigmented or demelanated skin, the only way for them to exist in this new amalgamated empire was for them to follow the same process, in a sense, that the Franciscan Moors used to create them, you see, which is why the white woman or the Caucasoid woman, or what CNB called the Patagonia blonde woman, became the predominant issue or focus, because that was the one that they wanted the Moorish nobles to breed with, so that way he could produce a lighter-skinned child, so that way that child could now become part of the amalgamated empire, or the Franciscan Empire, which then became the amalgamated empire, because all of the so-called mulattoes that was born started having babies with predominantly Caucasian women. You can read about this in a book, The Black Jacobin specifically. It's very interesting how he laid it out. So 300 years to get into the situation, 300 years to perfect it. So once they got perfected in the amalgamated empire, it's now running everything. All of the Franciscan Moors fell under their jurisdiction and fell under their retribution. And so color institutions were instituted again, and the influx of white slaves under the term immigrants had to be brought in to forcibly re-people the United States. Why do you think they killed all them people in the Civil War? So that way there would be mad land open for them to bring all of the European immigrants, slaves, who just got freed by the Tsar and them, to come over here and act as soldiers and kick the rest of us off the land. So what this then means, again, brothers and sisters, is that we fell to our own devices, but based upon these people following in our footsteps, making the same mistakes, they have now put themselves in a karmic retribution where they won't exist as a people after 2025. Forever. So all of this, you see them getting black babies and doing all this with babies. People didn't give a damn about Jillian Michaels until she got that black baby. And everybody started jumping on to talk about how great she is. You don't know how she really is with this child. You don't know how these people are. It's agenda. It's fetish. It's something that's going on, and it's popular. It's like the new Bugatti everybody want to get. So, yeah, there may be some of them that's doing it for love, but Hollywood is not about love. Hollywood is about status and accumulation of wealth at all costs, usually at the cost of someone sexually demeaning themselves. So, those people who orbit Hollywood are the ones you don't always see every time, but you see them in movies. People like Viggo Mortensen, people like Avery Brooks, you know what I mean? Idris Elba don't have to worry about putting on no dress or nothing, because he comes from the Idrisid dynasty of southern England, of Moors, who also made a pilgrimage over here during the 1311 expedition of Abu Bakr. So you don't have to worry about that, because again, he's still foreign. You see what I'm saying? He's a Moor, you know what I mean? But he's also he's a Britannic Moor though. So a lot of Moors see things along national lines nowadays. So if you're not allied with them in their own national district or specific locale, then for some reason you're not down with, you're not really doing. Same way anybody in any other movement may feel like that about people who's not in their movement. But if everybody is thinking about that, about thinking the same thing about everybody in every other movement, then that means that everybody is deluding themselves. See what I'm saying? Because you don't really know. All you can look at is the products and what the products of these movements are providing for you. It's like Malcolm said, if your religion ain't working, then put it in the closet. So, of course, Farrakhan was going to turn the Nation of Islam, you know what I mean, against itself or whatever. Of course he was going to do that. You know what I mean? The question is, the niggas know that that was his operation or his modus operandi, you know what I mean, prior to him getting in there. He ain't no different than Jesse. Him and Jesse was basically under the same program. This doesn't mean that they didn't do great things and inspire great people. You can't take that from him. You can't take the Million Man March away from him. He accomplished that. Whether it was an op or not, he still accomplished something that everybody else wanted to copy after, which shows you that when we initiate something, that's what it was. That's why people were scared to death. Now imagine if we went there and basically said in that thing, we want to take everybody's name and all of these people are going to represent the reconstituted republic. It would have been a whole different thing. So the whitey would have looked at it as sedition, but it's not. But he could look at it like that based upon the fact that he got papers on everybody as 14th Amendment citizens. That's why the understanding the true nationality that you want to represent is very important. So that way you know exactly what parameters you can do your thing in. And if you're going to use instruments that's provided by them to clarify things with you, you make sure that you personalize them yourself. So when you give it back to them, it's the same way you would basically discharge whatever they give to you in terms of accepted for value. Again, another concept that came out of the 1957 UCC code when it was introduced. So we got to, again, look at the historical context of what we're saying when we talk about things like sovereignty, nationality, fiscal responsibility, you know what I'm saying, and delegate how that is relevant to where we are in our individual lives and how we can consolidate that in a uniform fashion without bloodshed. So all of this meandering that you see and the deterioration that you've seen in the community all happened when we said it was going to happen. If you get the tape, Welcome to Obamatopia, I said it then. This was right before he got in. I said they're going to bring people into the movement, and they're going to be basically FBI and things like that, and they're going to be basically deteriorating, getting people caught up in a lot of BS. And it's going to get worse from there, and it's going to look like a whole different movement. So imagine how the people who are 70 plus look at the Nation of Islam now. You had people, like Khaled said, you had people who went to insane asylums. You had the people who were killed and murdered because they would not fall from the truth that the white man was the devil. Why he care if you call him the devil so much when in every movie he makes, he depicts himself as Lucifer or a vampire or a werewolf or a child killer or a murderer or a serial killer or whatever? Why does he get upset when you say, okay, well, yeah, you are the devil? Because once you know and accept that to yourself in whatever context you are, because there's white folk that feel like that about white folk. Don't think that it's only black people. Don't think that it's only black people. Rewind that. Rewind it. Hold up, listen to this now.
Before the Civil War, New Orleans was unique in all the world, more French than it was American. Races freely mixed, creating a new class known as Creoles, or free people of color. European men were especially enchanted by the exotic light-skinned women of this class, whose ancestors were the children of master and slaves, Spanish and French.
You see what I'm saying? Why are they putting this on Columbus Day? Why are they putting all this on Columbus Day? Because, they just don't want to get into the fact that the Spanish and they don't want to get into the fact that the Spanish and French they talking about was both black. And the slaves they talking about was the white folks that they raised up in.
Europeans would select the young women, pledge support, raise families with them, yet never marry. One such liaison, that between Jean-Baptiste and Poupon de Lille, produced a daughter whose dreams would change.
That's the story of Louise and Annie. Louise from France, and Anna Maria, the great-grandmother of Anna Maria Verdes. So again, the clearer we get with this thing, the clearer we know exactly where to go with. The more complicated it sounds, the more they're trying to bind you into stuff that you don't have to really deal with. People don't talk about Fiambe and stuff, his work, for a reason. They want to get you caught up in the temples, and they want to get you caught up in rivalries and all of that, when most of these people that's involved with this is Freemasons anyway, or Blue Lodge Black Masons anyway, which doesn't mean that they're necessarily evil, but it does mean that they are obligated to keep a secret against you. And anyone obligated to keep a secret against you, therefore, is a secret enemy of yours. And the guilt that person may have in their heart from keeping whatever secret, or being a certain way, or feeling envious the fact that you can get this knowledge and they don't have to put themselves in compromising positions to get it, it breeds animosity in the population. And this is a global thing. This is why it was put out like that. That's why it had to be used like that, because it was the only universal system that was at one time based upon honor due to the nobles who instituted it. But as we fell, and as the daughters of men became corrupted and started to be married off and be put into situations to have to produce offspring that was not necessarily reflective of them phenotypically, it became a disassociation of the psyche of the original black gene as it incorporated itself into the brown, and then from the brown into, let's say, the red, and then from the red to the yellow, and then from the yellow to the white. Some people would say it was the yellow before the red and then the white, but as a painter, as an artist, I know when I create a palette or I'm creating a painting, when it comes to color gradation, it goes, at least for me, it goes the way I said the first time. So specifically, like I said, what we're talking about, brothers and sisters, is the fact that most of the stuff that's coming out now is stuff that's regurgitated, Winston Strout Patriot type material that was already out there. But again, this ain't nothing new to the Super Heru. We've been talking about this 4 years ago. You dig what I'm saying? So my thing is, if you know somebody grimy and you getting money with them, and then when shit get hectic, you then decide to do whatever. It's like when you knew it was grimy from the door, why didn't you bounce then? But see, that's how I think as a double Scorpio, you dig? But there could be a perfectly rational explanation for that. Yet at this point in my life, it bears no relevance to me whatsoever. I only talk about it in Super Heru forums at points sometimes because so many people call me and want to get aspects of what, my take on it is. And we always said that we would share whatever we get in terms of understanding to help build a better culture freedom, to produce the power, to become equal, to manifest God, to build and destroy that which do not need, to born the cipher how it's supposed to be. But like I said, these niggas is acting up. These bitches is acting up, and these niggas is letting them. And they letting them because they obligated and they under the pain and threat of death or imprisonment not to. So this is part of their job. This is why a lot of niggas can be certain places and all of that. I realize that I got over 5, however many thousands of hits on YouTube. You know what I mean? But now only 2, it's deep, man. It's deep. And then I'm seeing other people where they be having millions of people and they don't be talking about nothing. So what that shows me is so long as I can dehumanize myself and debase myself, dishonor my family, I can become a millionaire. Well, if that's not how I want to do it, or if that's not how you want to do it, brothers and sisters, well, you're going to have to create something for you to do it how you want to do it, because these people, again, they acting up, and because these niggas is letting them, they just keep throwing more salt in the game and moving us further and further away from the obvious what's going on. Just because this person is melanated don't mean that they ain't white. Don't get so caught up in melanin that you don't understand where melanin is today, that your melanin no longer represents your national affiliation, that you could be the blackest nigga and the whitest Nazi in the mind, in action, and vice versa. You could be the whitest Caucasian, and you be the one that's ready to go all the way in while all these other niggas is playing. Or you look at the Mexicans, you know what I mean? They are a product of us and those of us that came over from Xi'an or Ixi, which is now China, you know, and those of us that stayed here or whatever eventually became what they were. But prior to them becoming that, they had to be taught in how to be that and how to adopt that culture. And they even have to come to an understanding. When some of them know that they come from us specifically that was here. Because when Lemuria fell, when Atlantis fell, when Kandam Kumari fell, a lot of people remnants went to us now as Africa or Southeast Asia or Australia. When Atlantis fell, a lot of people went to us now Africa. A lot of people went to re-people the so-called eastern seaboard of the Americas. When Mu fell, a lot of people went to the western part of America as well as the western shores of South America, and then also went over into what is now Russia or whatever, on the other side, Japan, Hawaii, and everything else. Everybody got here. Everybody used to come here to learn, man, and get knowledge, and then take what we got over here and then create a whole nation over there. Why do you think on the exotic map of the United States, every nation that's listed with city in the old world is listed in the United States? Because these places was over here first. Remember, the zodiac, the international date line was moved from Denver, Colorado to Greenwich, England. That means the center of the world at one point was here. This is Mecca. The best part of the planet Earth is where you at, not someplace where people are circumambulating who whip and hate women, you know what I mean, who whip, hate women, and prison women, but then want to get the Quran so adept enough where they're able to go do their circumambulation and then put their head in the Sanguinary Sard, which is basically an image of cunnilingus, of you eating a black woman out, because it's a black hole that you put your face in, your whole face. But because these black women, because these black men don't give a damn about anything other than themselves, this is what they want to perpetuate. So I say, let them do that. I say, let everybody cannibalize each other as much as possible. And those of us that don't want to actually do that and do something righteous, let's do that. But let's not bullshit. If we're going to do it, then let's actually have iron sights and dates and make certain things happen. And let's all, if we're going to file something, file the same thing on the same day. We ain't got to tell them when. But that means we have to coordinate in such a way that is opposite of what is here. We are in the surveillance age, remember? We went from the technology age, from the atomic age to the age of technology, now to the age of surveillance. From the age of surveillance, now we get into the age of war. But this war is the overall extension. So on December 21st, when you see that second sun in the sky, that's going to be a sign for you to know that this whole thing is not only a wrap, but that once it's a wrap, there's going to be something for you to do in the hereafter, whatever that is, based upon what you've accumulated now. Because think about it, you are the national treasure now, the Bays and the L's. We're the only ones that can be American citizens, because we're the only ones that remember this place used to be called Americanos. So they had to create something named Amerigo Vespucci, who was like a janitor. Okay, and name some whole fictitious history after this dude. Same way they take all of Ben Bay's exploits and give it to Ben Franklin. Like this dude actually existed. But again, when I say that, I'm crazy because I'm just some black dude that's out here, reading books and whatever and thinking I'm knowing this and that, right? So with that, brothers and sisters, we're going to say peace. And if you have any questions, anybody want to join the class we have this Wednesday at 9 o'clock, holler at me at houseofel@hotmail.com. Also, check out www.thedarkskull418. Please recommend it to your book stores. You can give them my email. You know what I mean? As many people who read it, it makes it better for us because it frees up a lot of capital that we don't have. You know what I mean? And because I'm not out here, charging people $10,000 for cruises or whatever shit that's never going to happen. Again, I'm doing the work, so I'm sorry I can't be on YouTube all the time. I can't be on, 125th Street and all that all the time or whatever. Can't be on the road all the time doing all of this because what we're doing is unprecedented, man. And a lot of people sleeping, but you're going to see. And like I said, when you see that second sun, know what the deal is. If anybody want to peep aspects of it, get the tape, what the F, a modern Moorish overview of modern sex at www.aseertheducateers.com. Thank you again for doing the work. Thank you for all of the brothers that's out there that's exposing the truth and exposing what's happening in terms of these different principles. And those who are seeing through that, those who saw through that, and those that's just coming into it, again, don't get caught up. Yes, a lot of that sovereignty shit is BS, yet there's something else going on with that. And again, you want to understand aspects of it that niggas is not going to tell you, holla at your boy, houseofel@hotmail.com. Thank you again for being a part of Super Heru Radio family. And that's that. Peace.